But anyway, so I'd like to introduce you to Paulette. Say your last name?
Risher.
Risher. She just told me how to say it, and I can't remember anyway. That's the enlisted thing. I guess we're just not smart enough. Okay, so Paulette Risher, she's CEO of Stills Better.
Great.
Okay. Go. Keep the flip down. Thank you.
So I'm going to assume that you can understand me and hear me if I don't use the mic.
Yes.
And if I start falling off, your job is to raise your right hand. Okay. And then we will enlist you in the Army. You know, just raise that right hand there. All right. So first thing, thank you so much. It's really been interesting for me to listen to all the discussions, and we've had a lot of things that have been mentioned, and I'm probably going to repeat some of them. So just forgive me if I'm repeating this. My point is going to be talking about building a path from the time you hire a veteran to making them a fully integrated member of your team. And I will tell you right up front, you're going to get the psychologist's perspective, because if you ask me what I am, I'm an organizational psychologist. So I'm going to talk to you about the people side of this. So first thing, I'm going to talk about transition as a human process. I'm going to talk to you about what veterans would like you to know about them, many of which items have been covered already. And I'm going to give you some resources. Because for me, this is one thing to hear it. It's the next thing to go back when you have a crisis or something happening and you need to look it up. So having some reference material is always helpful. So, transition is a human process. There's a saying, and you'll hear it in the engineering community, so you probably have heard it here a few times. All models are wrong, and some are useful. And I'm going to talk about a useful model, about the transition as a human process. William Bridges is probably the daddy of this. He's one of those rare people who's respected in academia, but also in the popular press. 5,500 academic citations, and well over 1.6 million Google hits if you put in William Bridges transition. So over the last 5 or 6 years, I've probably talked this pitch in some variation to 1,500 or 1,800 people. And every time I do, regardless of military service, age, ethnicity, gender, education, I get this. Because what I describe is what we think we all experience as being a human being in transition. And so I like this model a lot. And what Bridges said is that when we are in a process of transition, there's 3 phases of it. The psychological reorientation. The first phase is the ending, the letting go, the saying goodbye. And sometimes those transitions are our choice, and sometimes they're not our choice. The middle phase, Bridges calls the neutral zone, and I took the liberty of the PowerPoint and renamed that the wilderness. And that's that part where the old structures are gone, or loosening their ties, but you don't know where you're going. It's the wandering around, trying to figure out what you want to do with your life, or what you want to do with your life at this moment in time. And we all do this. I'm 72, and I'll tell you, it's still wandering around. Not all who wander are lost, though, which is one of my favorite sayings. And finally, there is this new beginning, where you walk in through a threshold into a new setting. And that's where we're going to focus today. Now, here's some things about the process. This looks pretty in PowerPoint. It doesn't live pretty. It lives ugly. It lives complicated and messy. We find ourselves in multiple transitions. We've done something before and transitioned before, and yet we find this is a new experience. It's different for every time we go through this. And so many times, ourselves and the people who show up in our workplace are going through multiple transitions. We did a workshop for our people from Fort Benning, and of that workshop, 25% of them probably were going through a divorce or had just come through a divorce at the same time that they were transitioning out of the military. That's what life looks like. It is complicated and ugly. This just helps make it make more sense. So it's not, as I said, not just military to civilian, but healthy to sick, young to old, center stage to off on the sides, connected to people to being socially isolated. There are a lot of transitions in our lives where we have a clear sense of purpose of who we are, and we start losing it. And that happens, this happens to all of us. So what that people are surprised about, and veterans, we suck at this. We don't like to be emotionally in upheaval. Sorry, if you're looking for politeness, it's probably not going to happen. Oh, I forgot, he's got the camera. We don't like being emotionally on the roller coaster. I can't tell you how many people have walked into my office and we talk about this, they're so upset, but that overwhelms them. It adds complexity. It's already hard, and then you're emotional about it. You don't like the emotionality of it. But these steps are normal, and people are reassured that they aren't crazy. This is what life looks like. So here's the difference with a veteran, and this is someplace that I learned from one of Charlie's first guys. There are a lot of things about being an Army officer that I'm proud of. I can put mission first, myself second. I can work in harsh conditions and limited resources with time constraints when it's dangerous. It may be 5 o'clock somewhere, but it's 2 a.m. here, we're gonna get this damn thing done. I can have your back and you can have mine. I can give orders or I can take orders. I can work by myself or be a member of a team. Those are things I know, and nothing beats experience. I don't have to guess at that, I know that for a fact. But here's what I have to give up. Entitlement, any sense of people owe me. You know, we got a paycheck. Yes, do we owe people things for their service? Yes. On an ethical basis, absolutely. But they get a paycheck. So the sense of entitlement and attitude of, well, I'm better than yours. And one of the things you have to, and we talk a lot, and we talk very candidly to our clients. You're looking to have somebody pat you on the head and pat you on the hand, or don't come to still serving veterans. We'll put our arm around you and we'll help you. But one of the things that I tell my male clients a lot is, don't add any more testosterone to the air. They don't need it. You know, you get in this, well, if you were a real man, you would have done what I've done. Trust me, that doesn't go over well in interviews as part of that cultural sensibility. And people who counsel veterans know that we give them this speech pretty hard. So that's part of the letting go. So, and I think I skipped slides. Oh, maybe God didn't want me to give that. Never mind, it's all right. We'll just skip. All right, I'm going to go back though. I do want to voice track part of this letting go. Often there is a sense of grieving associated with that. Anger, denial, bargaining, depression, very common. Not once and done. It's a repeating process until you reach resolution. And that's the part that people get lost in. What I'm going to talk about today, though, in your roles, is to help, giving people a helping hand and pulling them into their new environment. And so that this is part of doing that. It's already been covered. Everybody has covered it. Ensure a smoother transition, make people productive quicker. It is to reduce employee turnover. And this hasn't been mentioned. There are 2 very strong academic studies that said 43% of veterans leave their first job in the first year. 43%. Now, the research is saying that that's because of financial concerns. We don't buy that. I think it is fear. I have to prove to myself that I can make it in the civilian world before I'm going to start really getting serious about that. And that's one of the reasons when you talk to veterans, have a conversation about what do you want to do with your life, not just what kind of job you want. Yeah, and if you need a job, I mean, if money really is the driving force, and for some it is, well, take the job. Mm-hmm. We call it A, B, C, and D. A job, a better job, a career, and finally a dream job if you're very lucky. Like this job, it's a dream job. Okay, so how do you help? All right, so organizational culture is a big deal. And the university culture has its own unique flavor. Anyone who's worked around here knows that it's different than most other places. If you put into Google organizational culture and ask what it is, you get 193 million hits. So there's not a lot of agreement around it. So what I think it is it's simply about how we do business around here. What your organizational culture is, how we do business. Here's the hard part. If you're living in that culture, it's really hard for you to explain to somebody else what it looks like. It's like the air we breathe. We don't think about the air we breathe unless it's in short supply or toxic or contaminated, or someone says, hey, this is bad air. We don't think about it. And that's where our culture is. And yet many of you are hiring managers and HR people. Your job is kind of be the front end of explaining what that job's going to look like. What is the culture that you're operating in? And one of the things that I did when I first retired, or second retired the last time, I went to work for Booz Allen Hamilton as a consultant. I ran their organization and strategy team in Huntsville. And they have a model called organizational DNA. And I'd always thought it was smart because they talked about 4 things that are really important in a culture. What's the structure? So people understand what is the structure? What is the decision-making authorities? Who makes decisions and what kind? Who has information and how is it shared or not shared? You know, that thing about information is power. Well, I can tell you that I can speak for Admiral Davis and myself. We know that information is not power. It's the sharing of information that makes you a leader in an organization. Because everybody comes to you then because you know what's going on. So sharing information, power, decision-making authority. And the last is the award system. And so many organizations screw that up because they'll say, oh, we're all about team, we love our teams, we're all about teams. But every award they give is an individual performance award. So what are you reinforcing? But as a new employee comes in and you're helping them try to understand what this is going to look like, talk to them about the basics. Now, there is a wonderful website called PsychArmor. Someone said to write down ONET, write down PsychArmor too. And PsychArmor is one of my favorite sites. They also have moved a lot of their material over to YouTube. So you can watch their videos without having to go through their registration. You also might think as a university, if you would like to become a partner with them, you have a certain number of people go through their program, you could be a PsychArmor partner. They have this great one with their most popular articles. It's called 15 Things Veterans Want You to Know About. And frankly, it's written to HR. And here, these are the 15. We're not all soldiers. And as John's been telling you, Harry's been saying all day, you know, soldiers say they're Airman, Marine, Coast Guardian, and Guardian. And they take offense if you call them space cadets. I just learned that. Sorry. The reserves and the Guard are part of the military. You've already got that one. Not everybody in the military is infantry, in spite of all the examples that have been used. Militaries have leaders at every level. You know, the day you can be in the Army 6 months and be in charge of people. It's just the thing is, you know, we tend to think in the military and the civilian world that a person's got to have a job title that has manager or leader or something in it. Military, that's not true. You can be responsible for other people at a very, very junior age. Military is always on duty. And I think there's that sense, that's one of the hard things for us to do is learn to power down. And that not everybody has that, and it's not a character flaw if they have time for their families and other things. We tend to be kind of this little bit of bias towards being workaholics. Not everyone killed somebody. Not everyone has PTSD. Some do, but not everyone. Not all people with the invisible wounds of war, PTSD, traumatic brain injury, some of the other ones are dangerous. Are there people? Yeah. Are there a lot of people? No. And you as professionals know, and you're living in campus in this world today. I've never been in a campus building where it had refuge area or safe refuge as a place here on a sign in this building. our world's changed. So yes, there are people who are hazards, but that is not normative. It's hard for the military to ask for help. Yes, that's true. It's a sign of weakness. We're not very good at it. Our military service changes. Here's one that I would not have recognized. Even all the years that I spent, 34 years in the Army, I would not have realized this. People look back on their military experience with different lenses. For some, it's the best years of their lives. Duty, honor, country, never leave a fallen comrade, I'm proud of what I do. And others feel used and abused and don't care about it and won't tell you that. Now, one of the things that really makes this, I find just so touching, is the older Vietnam veterans that you'll see in Lowe's and Home Depot with their service hats on. When those guys came home from war, they were spit upon. There was not a grateful nation standing to welcome them. We've gotten a lot better about that because many of those people are the children that fought this last wars, and not on our watch and not with our kids. So I think that is, this whole idea of you have to ask people about their service. But there's some you'll never know they're a veteran. And for female veterans, you really have to get them to tell you they're a female veteran. They may not volunteer that. Now, professional women tend to, but often our assumption is that you're not a veteran. And I have to tell you, being an old lady veteran, I have disabled veteran tags on my car. And it's so funny how many, your husband was in the was in the military. Yes, sir, and he was a Vietnam veteran. He paid very dearly for his service. However, not his car, not his license plate. He's been gone for 10 years. So it always shuts him up. So one of the really things, and it was mentioned earlier, veterans can speak very directly to other veterans. We have this sense of, I can talk to you, and I put it in English, and I put it in your language. And we have this group of Ray Vets, that's the Raytheon technology companies have an affinity group called the Ray Vets, and they've been partners with still serving veterans for many years. And COVID killed this workshop series, which was too bad because it was so much fun. They would take a bunch of these Ray Vets and come out and sit on a panel with our veterans, and behind closed doors, veteran to veteran, very plain spoken. And the panel, I'd ask them questions like, what was the path from where, to where you are, so that you can kind of get that military history. What did you screw up? What did you do well and you'd recommend? And it was so interesting, the things they would tell each other. And here are some of them. From the military, we have a sense of urgency. Most of our projects are short-term, high-impact, high-stakes projects. And so there is that sense of urgency. Get it done. Don't tell me it's going to be 3 weeks before I get my data. Don't tell me it's going to, and that having to get people calm down and understand that it's not a character flaw to want things on a normal, humane pace. It's just not the world we came out of. Learn about the new organization's rules, who does what, who makes decisions. I like this one. Recognize that there's a need to be tactful and politically correct. Some of us learn that better than others. But it's the idea is just because I come to you and say, I want my data and I want it now, you don't care. It's not, and they have to learn to slow their roll and to be more patient, and it takes time. And so as you get veterans in for the first time, especially the first line supervisors, now the HR people, you're the custodian of the rules. And your hands are tied sometimes of what you can share. That's why a veterans affinity group or veterans helping veterans or sponsorship programs are so helpful. Because I can tell you this quietly, don't say that. Or you're acting like a jerk, quit doing that. Where you, as the HR, you can't do that because it has, there's legal legal rules to that. Mission is important, but so too is business. And that's the one thing, of course, in Raytheon they want to talk about. How many have heard of the Aristotle study? Okay, so this has become one of my favorite pieces of research. Google spent 2 years in this project called Project Aristotle. And what they did was they were looking to find out what makes the best teams, what makes the teams most productive. And what they expected they were going to find is seniority, experience, technical competence. And here's what they found. They found that the number one characteristic of the most effective teams was psychological safety. Do I feel safe bringing my whole self to work, to share ideas, to put an idea out there without fear of retribution or attribution? Can I feel safe and that people are trusting who I am? That was the number one characteristic. But I also like the rest of it. I like the red ones. Dependability, structure and clarity, meaning and impact. So it isn't all, this is not all just, butterflies and rainbows. This is good human mutual support and good performance. Those two, I think, back to back, make this such a powerful setting. And I'm going to tell you something, and I really believe this. There's nothing that you will do for your veteran hires that will not benefit your civilian hires as well. This is good humanity. It's not just good, veteran management. My final thoughts. There are a lot of very good resources available on hiring and working with veterans. The American Society for Human Resource Management is obviously a very good one. They have a wonderful veterans, a whole section dedicated to veterans, and you don't have to be a SHRM member to gain access to that. I've already talked about PsychArmor. I think it is really a very powerful tool, and we use it. Every employee goes through the PsychArmor training that works for still serving veterans, including the people that answer the phone and that they know. One of the programs that I am absolutely adamant about everybody having is a program called SAVE, S-A-V-E. It's an acronym. It is a VA program designed for suicide awareness. And veteran suicide is a real issue. Suicide in general is a real issue. Look at the numbers. Look at the student veteran population, and even the student population are very vulnerable. And this SAVE is know the signs, ask the question, validate the concerns, and expedite the treatment. And Admiral Davis and I co-chair the Alabama's Challenge, which is the state's veteran suicide prevention efforts. So when we say we work a lot together, we do work a lot together. And Alabama has a higher than the national average, but a male veteran is 1.2 times more likely to die by suicide than their civilian counterpart, and for a female, that's 2.3%. 2.3 times more likely. And let me give you the example. I have one civilian in my headquarters office. Our development lady is civilian. And I had her do the SAVE training, annual requirement. We all do it again, and it's a good refresher. And she was taking this young woman who she has been a mentor to since this girl was in the 4th grade or something like this. And she's now a freshman at Jacksonville. And she was taking her back to school. And she started hearing the language that she has heard on the signs and the language this young woman was using. And she stopped and asked her, have you ever considered harming yourself? And the answer was yes. If she hadn't had this training, she wouldn't have known what to do. And I'm telling you that training could save a life. So the young woman is getting counseling services through the school, and she's being checked on and all of this. It's all of our responsibilities to take this action. And so that's one of my big pitches. And it's about a 30-minute YouTube video. This is not hard, but it will help give you the language. And finally, never hesitate to call the crisis line. And Admiral, I've forgotten, is it 988 is the new one?
Yeah, that's correct. It'll go into effect this summer in July. 988 system is.
So there will be a 988, right now where this is the crisis line for veterans and non-veterans. If you have a veteran on it, just push 1 for veteran. which put you over to the VA system and specialty teams around the country of specialized counselors. But this 988 system will come in this summer, and that will be for any mental health emergency. But you can call them. Here, anyone can call these folks and say, I have a veteran I'm concerned about. And they will help them. And is it perfect? No. Because this is a human and very sad, difficult business. But it's damn good. I have a person I'm very close to who one evening sprung on me that she had been suicidal. And she had called the crisis line. And they talked her down for this. And even with all my background in this, I didn't see the signs. So I have the key to her gun cabinet, which I keep on my key ring. Because firearms is the #1, is the biggest issue in Alabama. So without ending on a sad note, but you're in the HR business, you're in human business, you know that these things are out there. And so knowing what to do and what to call and who to reach out to, could save a person's life. So, and I hate this, and Charlie, I know that you use this, and so did I. Hiring a veteran is not just the right thing to do, it's the smart thing to do. And yes, it's a cliche, and I roll my eyes, and I apologize, but it's also the truth, too. And I think that veterans, in order to be really successful in this transition into your civilian workplace, they just need to have someone that has some compassion for what they're going through. And they need to, that has respect for their service. You don't have to bow down to them or kiss their ring or pat them on the head, but knowing that you care enough makes a difference. They can translate, and trust me, even as long as I've been around the military, I have trouble with some of the language. Every service has its own language, and you have to constantly be learning. And they can help coach and counsel and push them in the right direction in terms of organizational culture, and that should be an explicit part of their orientation. So with that, I'm going to get off the stage. What are your questions? No, come on, this isn't that quiet of an audience. Please.
So this is definitely HR related, but I'm just curious, still serving veterans, what kind of outreach efforts do y'all have? Y'all are headquartered in Huntsville, is that right? So what kind of outreach efforts do you have? How far out do y'all go?
Let me just put a frame around what we do. Last year, we helped 1,050 veterans find jobs. The average job was $62,000, Charlie. And so we are helping people from all over the country and getting people from overseas that we're helping, because they don't necessarily have transition services in all places. They do in theory, but not in practice. And so about 55% of our clients are outside of Alabama and Georgia. We use LinkedIn is huge for us. We're using that as a way to attract people and recruit people in. We have a very strong educational program. We have a series of face-to-face workshops, which COVID has not helped, navigating the transition wilderness. We also have a series of technical ones about job search skills. Many of them have already been very much parallel with the Goodwill ones. But how do you tailor a resume for a given job? Interviewing, salary negotiation, the basics of going in and telling your story. How do you tell the story of your service? How do you make sense of it? And I think there's a couple of them that we're working on right now, especially additional education programs that will help. So our outreach is social media. We get people calling in from all over the country because of our GuideStar, our seal of transparency, and some of these awards we've run. If you go look in those websites, will be very highly rated. So that's really where most of them, and word of mouth referrals. It's friends of friends of friends. My potential spam. I think I maybe shouldn't answer my phone. What else? Anything else? All right. Cards are here. Charlie and I, we work very closely together on stuff. And I'm also this is really a great audience, as my, we have a lot of friends in this group, and I appreciate it. And I think the only thing that I would add that I hadn't heard today, and it's a guard thing, so you correct me if I'm off base on this. This idea between the difference between a guard and a reservist and an active duty person. You can be a member of the Alabama National Guard, have served for 30 years, never been deployed except in times of natural disaster and civil disobedience at the call of the governor for 30 years, and the Department of Veteran Affairs does not consider you a veteran.
That regulation's changed.
Yeah, what's the newest?
It's 20 years, if you serve 20 years in the military. If you're a National Guard member and you served 20 years in the military and you've gotten a letter that says that, you have become a veteran.
Okay, well, that's a
For
huge
20
thing.
years. And that regulation, I want to say, and that legislation, I shouldn't say regulation, that legislation was passed, I think, 2018, 2019.
That's good, because before you had to be federally deployed. There were two categories, Title 10 and Title 32. And that made a difference. It made a difference in your benefits, and made a difference in your accessibility to services. And there were some exceptions. I'm really glad to know that, Steve. Thank you, and I'll go look that up. All right. Anything else? Any other oddball questions, if not for me, for the group? Okay, Phil, thank you so much for your attention.